Should have a bigger room.
I'm sorry? What is going on?
This is a big topic. It's a very, very hot topic.
Has your name on it?
Can you hear me in the back? If I use my Air Force voice, that's better?
Yeah.
Mike, that would be helpful. Thank you. So it's after, it's like 1 minute after 1 o'clock. I want to get going. I've got 90 minutes with you, and I usually spend about 3 hours on each topic. So I tried to distill down some points of interest that I hope that we can all go into together. My name is Dr. Peter Schmidt. I have the honor of being with you here today, and I was the former director of counseling and wellness programs for your Washington Department of Veterans Affairs. I left the agency last fall, and I have had the honor of working in higher ed for a good part of my career in the back. I've had the honor of counseling vets and teaching psychology, and I am just so honored. I had to mention psychology. These guys know it from yesterday. I had to, I'm just honored to be here with you today. Thank you. So, let's move on here. What do I plan to highlight here for you in the next 90 minutes? I want to highlight briefly military training. I got a couple of slides because we can't talk about TBI or PTS. Yeah, those two. We can't. I need a mic. We can't talk about the invisible ones without talking just briefly about military culture. We're going to identify the symptoms of PTSD and TBI and overlap between them. That'll be a slide towards the end of our presentation. And I want to highlight here, why do I have a D right there in parentheses?
Because it's not a disorder.
It's talking about disorder, right? And so I highlight that D because for me as a clinician, when I'm talking to another clinician, and I'm talking about treatment options for this particular condition, we have a common nomenclature, we have a common way of understanding. However, our general society tends to stigmatize this disorder. So I put that as a D, so I try to keep it as post-traumatic stress. And I suggest for those of us that are civilian types, we talk about it as post-traumatic stress. And I'm aware that OIF, OEF, Operation Enduring Iraqi Freedom, and OND folks, is that me? Yes, it was. They prefer to hear it as a stress. Nobody asks for a trauma to happen to them. Nobody. And so to say that someone is disordered because of a trauma happening, I think is a disservice. Let us clinicians work with this term. All right? I can't say enough about that. That's just. We're going to discuss a bit about post-traumatic growth. Some treatment resources and options, accommodation strategies, and let's take a look here at the next slide in just a second. I'm aware, and my backcourt people heard this yesterday, but I believe this in my heart of hearts. I look around this flooded room without an how many people, and I'm going to say we got probably at least 1,000 years of life experience. Now, some of us that are senior bump that number up a little bit more. That's good. That's good for us. Numbers, right? So, but in any case, we are all teachers and learners here together. I have some information to share. I hope that you will share some of your experiences with time allotment and all of that business. But I already know. I'm humbled by those. Some of you I've seen that are sitting here. I'm humbled that you're here because I know you've got information to share. I also wanted to share that the slides that I have are loaded with information. I'm going against what people talk about with PowerPoint, right? PowerPoint by death. But I loaded them up only because I knew that you would have them after. And so I will highlight some points on the slides. I might even eliminate them given our time. But I wanted you to be aware of that. Test? Better?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like that better. That Air Force voice wasn't working too well. I'd like to rather leave that for the Army or the Marines. Anyway, so I may be skipping some things down the line here. This here compliments of Sam Powers, who's from the Director of Veteran Services at the University of Washington. I have this up here for a reason. And it's to forewarn, or be, if you see this symbol, basically I may be showing a film or talking about a topic that might be sensitive in nature. In our conversation here today, we may, some of you may, have some feelings that might come up. And my purpose here is to hopefully make this a comfortable setting. If you need to get up and take care of yourselves, if you need to do whatever you got to do, then do it. I'm not offended, and even if you want to get out of here and say, God, this guy sucks, I'm okay. I'm okay with that. Bad humor, I know, shit happens. So the bottom line is, you're going to see the symbol a couple times. I want you to be aware, okay? Let's talk about military culture. I'd like you to, with the person next to you, I'd like you to just talk about what qualities, skills, attributes, behavior does one adopt or adhere to when in the military. So, if you could take a moment, think about that, and I'd like you to pair up with the person next to you and just take a moment to, hi, my name is, and give this question a whirl. Okay? Give me a couple minutes.
They had like 4 people on. They couldn't hear, and then they got the mic, they were good. So okay, good. Yeah. Is that what they're saying? Yeah. There's only one person. But they'll come back. They'll come in.
in the next room. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to curtail this kind of activity unless you want to whisper. If we can all agree, these are our inside voices. But anyway, I apologize. I know it's their problem, but we work in a collaborative environment, don't we? Okay, so you know, half of 1% of our general population served in the last decade or two, according to the Pew Research Report. And what is it, 22 million veterans now still around with us? So tell us now, what did you come up with? What were, give me some one-word, two-word qualities.
Don't talk about your problems.
Keep the problems to yourself.
Indestructible.
Be selfless.
Say it again.
Be selfless.
Selfless. Regimented. Oof, I got the hair standing up. Come on, give me some more.
Resilience.
Say it again.
Resilience.
Resilience. Good.
Problem solver.
Problem solver.
Willing to die.
Willing to die.
Time management.
Say it again.
Time management.
Time management. Dependability.
Tough it out.
Tough it out. Embrace the suck.
If you don't accomplish your goal, somebody might die.
Somebody might die. Pretty heavy burden, right? Other thoughts? I know there was more.
Loyalty.
Loyalty.
Resilience.
See, I'm sorry. And I got my ears in this now.
Resilience.
Resilience. Okay, great. So, you know, we've got mission, right? Dedicated to the mission. We got teamwork, discipline, honor, integrity, attention to detail, emotional control, absolutes, vigilance, and we could go on with the list, right? We've got people that go in the military, basic training, they spend time, some even spend 20 years. And how much time is spent to demilitarize and reprogram to civilian life? None. Right? None. So we've got these attributes that people have grown up with it in their head at 18 or 19 years old. And we know that the brain continues to develop into the mid-20s, if not on, right? But nonetheless, we've got this culture that's been created. And I wanted to show you again. That with the warrior's attitude, this could be any branch of service, even though some of us in the Marines or Army might think differently, or the Air Force. We got that. I was there. Come on. So, strength, valor, courage, right? All of those, esprit de corps, respect, integrity, all noble traits of a warrior. Thousands of years ago, any other military, same sort of deal, right? So, for a warrior, though, and I got the inference from a couple of you back there, for a warrior to develop stress symptoms of any kind is a failure to live up to the warrior ideal. If I am experiencing stress, or I'm sick, or I'm not able to complete the mission or be with my battle buddies, what does that make me feel like? What does that make them feel like? Right? So, when we talk about the invisible wounds, you got to overlay the invisible wounds with this stuff here. And I would go into more detail on battle line to home line, those attributes and traits that were trained as a result of basic training and military deployment. We just don't have time. But the bottom line, what I need you to get, this is playing itself out hugely in the lives of our vets, right? Why do we have folks that are still living up in the Cascades and the foothills of Shelton, up in that area? Why is it? They're still struggling with this business of battle line to home line. They don't know how to come home. They haven't been given the opportunity to regroup and become a civilian again, not taught down. Let's go deep. Does this make sense? Okay. So let's go deeper. And let's talk about PTS with the D. We know that about 6 out of every 100 people have PTSD in the general population. About 12 million people, 12 million adults in the U.S. that have PTSD in any given year. And 8 out of every 100 women have PTSD, 4 out of every 100 men. If we want to take a look at the healthcare utilization report, are you familiar with that? It's October 2001 to June 2015. I forgot to wear my glasses. Anyway, I just discovered. So 1,965,534 OIF, OEF, OID vets served in the global war on terror. Of that number, 1,218,857,000 sought VA health care. Of those, 393,139 had a diagnosis of PTSD. What does that mean? Are they all coming forward?
No.
It's the survey data, correct? So I like to think of it that, yeah, these are the numbers, and that's up to 2015. I don't know why the VA cut off the reporting, but I think there's more. You and I both know there's more, right? So my hope is that we will gather some information. Information's power. I think it can change people's lives. I hope it will transform. The information you receive today can be transforming for those that you work with. Vietnam veterans, about 30% of Vietnam veterans have PTSD in their lifetime. We got about 12% of Gulf War I, and about 11 to 20% of global war on terror. So, if we take a look at PTSD, I'd like you to, again, can we just kind of talk silently? I'm going to test you. If this doesn't work, we won't do it anymore. Okay? We got to be respectful. So, let's try it. Let's try it. Because you guys have such wealth of knowledge, I think it's important for us to share. How would you define a traumatic event, and what are some examples? Can you just do that in like 1 minute? Please? Vita? Por favor? Thank you so much for honoring the request to keep your voices down. You started to pick it up, right? You started to pick it up. And I thought, okay, what's going to happen? Honored. It was so cool. Thank you. What'd you come up with? Yes, sir.
We were talking here about your definition. There isn't, to me, there isn't a definition of PTSD for one individual. Everybody has a different cause or a different way of dealing with it or getting it. You know, we could all be in the same place at the same time, but to me, it all depends on your perception. And everybody's perception is different.
Okay. So I'm going to agree with you to a point, and here's what I'm going to share. all veterans, some folks heard this yesterday, all veterans with PTSD are like some veterans with PTSD are like no other veteran with PTSD. However, we do know that what causes PTSD are particular traumatic events. And to us clinicians, we have a definition of all that means. I do agree with you. We got to keep in mind, we got this definition, we got these cluster symptoms, we got this diagnosis. Do they fit into the box? Human beings don't sometimes fit into every box, right? So I will agree, but if you can understand my point too, I think we can identify what a definition which will cover, but also what are some trauma, what are some causes of trauma? Yes, sir. Lonnie?
Eric wrote something down here. Eric's writing down for us. So Eric, go ahead and read what we.
Man, you got put on the spot, Eric.
He likes to do that. Any event that impacts you beyond your previously established normal coping mechanisms.
So, any event that impacts you beyond your previous coping mechanisms. Did I get that right? Yeah. Okay. What else? Yes, ma'am. Can you tell me your names too? I've been letting that slide.
Sure.
Yes.
My name is Terry Scoble.
Terry?
I'm out of WorkSource Spokane.
Oh, okay.
So we collectively decided that our definition would be any event that happens in your life that has a significant lasting impact on how you think, how you behave, how you respond.
Okay. Yeah, we can throw that up there. I think for every one of you, there'll be a different definition, right? So let's go into a formal, but what are some causes? What are some traumatic events? Yes, ma'am. Tell me your name.
Leslie Merck,
Leslie.
an aircraft crash.
Crash. Aircraft. Yes. What else?
Automobile accident.
I'm sorry, what? An accident, car accident. Yes, sir?
I was going to say abuse.
Abuse. Sexual, physical abuse. Your name, sir?
Sam.
Sam, thanks. Say it again. Emotional abuse? Yes, great. Okay. Yes, sir.
Rocky, death. Witnessing death.
Witnessing death. Great. Like I said, you guys are experts here. You've got a lot of wisdom in the room. And so if we take a look at the pictures, what do they depict? Right? So we got combat, we got natural disasters, car accidents, we've got the abuse, physical abuse, we've got terrorists, we've got earthquakes, any number of things. We could also add racism. We could also add life-threatening illness. We could also add poverty, right? Although those are not in the DSM specific. But I think that those would also qualify. So if we take a look at PTSD and the history of it, you could go back to the Swiss back in 1678, and they would call it nostalgia. That's how they called it, the PTSD. The Germans called it Heimweh, homesickness. Estaroto, did I say that right in Spanish? I'm sorry if I butchered that, but Estaroto means to be broken. We've got the Civil War. What was it called?
Sunstroke.
Pardon me?
Sunstroke.
Sunstroke, soldier's heart, right? And then irritable heart, nostalgia, that's what it also is known as. World War I, what was it called? Shell shock. And what about when we talk about World War II in Korea? Combat fatigue. And so, right? And so, these if you wanted to read a book, War of the Soul by Ed Tick, he covers all that very well. So, let's take a look here at the definition coming out of DSM-5, and here as a clinician, this is what we would look at, and it is that a person was exposed to. This is very carefully worded by these folks, the American Medical Association. Death, threatened death, actual or threatened serious injury, or actual or threatened sexual violence as follows. So that would be the big definition to start with. And then we come up with Either they had direct exposure, so they were exposed directly to this. They witnessed it, right? They weren't part of the event, but they did witness what was going on. Indirect, maybe that these guys went out on a combat mission, I couldn't go, they came back, they started talking about what happened to the group. So close, so near, and yeah, that sure impacted me. And then the fourth one, this was new in DSM-5, and that was the one that talks about repeated or extreme exposure in the course of professional duties. This is for your firefighters, for your police, your law enforcement, and these first responders who have to deal with body parts, or maybe they're hearing the stories of abuse on a daily basis. It does not have to do with watching, say, a movie or indirect exposure to watching a movie of that sort. So, does this make sense? Okay, great. So, what I wanted to ask you then is, how does PTSD develop? And I'm sorry, I'm going to cook it because I'm watching the time. How does PTSD develop? Well, if we take a look here, these three up above, I have significance, and that would be the intensity and the frequency, duration, and proximity of the event. So, how intense was it? How frequent was it? How long was it? How long did it last? And how close was the individual to it? Is that fit? So, I think those are three key things to keep in mind. Was the person seriously hurt? What was the strength of the reaction? Did they feel like they were falling apart? Did they get sick? Did they vomit? Did they feel like they had control of the event, or did they feel like they dissociated, personalized, felt out of maybe even out of body about that? But what's key to all this is the support. And a while back I saw a study. There were 13 correlative factors that will help someone to move through what they've experienced. And this was super loaded. It's the support. So if we can provide support, and how soon the support came afterwards, great. What happened to our Vietnam vets when they came home?
No support. Ignored.
Right? I find better support going up in the foothills. What's that? Yeah, all sorts of crap. Thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah. Sure.
I come home, they buses from Contra Airport.
Here, Kevin, let me give you that. I wish I could get it back there.
Well, when I come home, we got a bus from Treasure Island to the San Francisco International Airport, and they bussed us, and it looked like a prisoner bus. It had bars and chicken mark on the windows, and I said, "What the hell?" And they had MPs. They had about 20 MPs, and they took us to the back of the airport, international airport, and they made us march in. And they had these MPs on either side of us. And as they opened the door, you start hearing the hollering and throwing stuff at you and calling you a baby killer, and stuff like that. And they told us, if you're going to fly, and you're going to fly someplace, they'll get you some civilian clothes. Because they'll kill you. So we had to buy civilian clothes.
Thank you for that, and I'm sure that echoes some experiences and stories of maybe even other generations as well, right? Ed Tick, I'll just share this with you. Ed Tick, in his book, War of the Soul, talks about warrior tribes. Warrior tribes would never send anybody off to war unless it was necessary and it meant the life of the tribe. And so the leaders would put these folks out there, and these warriors would go to war, And when they came home, they didn't come back directly to the tribe. This is generally speaking. They went off with senior warriors of the tribe to experience and work through the symptoms of PTSD. When they came back to the tribe, each of them got to tell a story so that that story became the tribe's story. After that, they went on to a warrior ceremony. And the belief is that an injury to one is an injury to all, that everybody feels the pain. And unfortunately, in our culture, and man, that story just gets to me. Why do we treat our warriors that way? So we could learn by other cultures and how we can do better for our people when they are put in harm's way, when they think that they are doing good for us, And anyway, you got my point. Yes, ma'am.
Could you spell that name, the author's name?
Tick. T-I-C-K. Ed Tick. Okay, thank you. Who else is at risk? Folks that come from low socioeconomic backgrounds, relationships with parents that was poor, those formative upbringing, learning how those coping skills, stress, learning how to deal with stress in the form of age. Remember, for some of us, we don't even think about that. But if you were raised in an environment where things were chaotic, when stress is introduced into your life, it might be difficult to cope with that. And at an early age, if we're experiencing trauma, research now shows that parts of the brain are impacted developmentally. And the corpus callosum in the middle of the brain, or executive functioning, the occipital lobe. There's parts of the brain that are heavily impacted by adverse childhood experiences. Repeated childhood trauma and the age at which one is exposed to a war zone. If you exposed at 18 versus maybe 35 or 40, it might be a different experience. Might be, generalities, right? Okay. Are you with me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, sir? Thank you, sir.
I'm with you, brother.
I know you are. I got to tell you, I wish I could just sit and talk with everybody. Anyway, it's humbling. Okay, let's talk at whoops. Okay, what are some myths of PTSD? What do you hear about that? Yes. Every warrior has it. Yes, ma'am.
You're going to go into the local post office and shoot them all down.
Okay, you're going to go post, right? And tell me your name, Kevin. And you are, ma'am? What's your name? I want to try to remember. Yes.
Gwen Early.
Gwen.
I'm from Chelan.
Yeah, great. And Mike?
Yep. So, Mike, obviously, it's the PTSD is permanent.
Permanent. Give me some others. Sam?
That it's only military folks that have it. I mean, granted, we are at a veterans conference,
Yeah.
but it's not just military folks.
Got it. Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
And that it's combat related, could be childhood related, and went into the military to get away from that.
Got it. Okay. So good stuff. I would like to spend more on each slide here, but with time, sign of weakness in character. Think about that. Wow. We all went through the same experience together. We experienced the same mission in combat together. What the hell's the matter with that guy? What's wrong? Right? People with PTS are violent, unpredictable, and dangerous. We got that example in Home Postal. Cannot tolerate the stress of holding down a job. Right? You go into a job interview. Are you going to mention PTS or PTSD? Yeah, no, because the employers don't understand, right? And yet, boy, I can tell you some stories there of how it did work out fine. I mean, I've known several people in my career who own business, very successful business people, Vietnam vets and PTSD, right? They're doing great. They tend to be second-rate workers. No effective treatment, no effective recovery, right? All sorts of myths out there. Information is power. You can start changing the dialogue. You can start changing the narrative out there just by start talking about this. Challenge people softly in your conversations, right? So, in talking about myths, everyone reacts to trauma the same way. And there are more myths out there, but for now, I just wanted to tease you with a couple. couple, and let's talk about triggers. In my work here, in my work here, a number of years ago, I had a Vietnam vet I was working with, and he showed up in my office and said, man, I'm here because VA sent me, they said I got some Ptsd or some bullshit like that. I'm quoting. That's what he said. He was rattled, he was upset, he came armed, right? And I said, put that weapon in a file cabinet, and we'll begin our session. And there's a reason for that. That's battle line to home line, right? That's what we're taught. Keep yourself safe. Anyway, so I'm going to call him Bill. Bill goes ahead. He's with the Air Force, but he gets assigned to a helicopter, and they're flying over a jungle. And as they're flying over a jungle, there was some sniper fire coming from the bush, and he nodded to, got the pilot's attention and said, "Hey, I think I know where it's coming from, and can we go back around and do a pass?" They went back around and passed. The sniper started firing again, hit the fuel tank. The fuel tank started to spill inside the chopper, and the pilot, non-verbally, goes ahead and looks at him and says, "You got to get out, jump," right? And that communication, that non-verbal communication, that's what happened. And the chopper goes down, he jumps, he's the only survivor. In that story alone, what did his five senses pick up? What do you imagine happened? I can tell you what happened, but what do you imagine happened with that chopper?
Smell of fuel.
Smell of fuel.
Trees, the humidity.
Green trees, humidity, sound. What was the sound?
Helicopter.
Crash.
Fire, the helicopter.
Fire, the heat from the fire,
Falling.
right? So the senses, it takes any sensory signal, such as sound, sight, smell, taste, or touch, to turn on that autonomic nervous system, that fight or flight response. And what I like to say is that in those situations that are death, that have impending death or threatened death, our brain remembers too well. It says you want to avoid that stuff in the future. It's hardwired into us. That's how we've survived as a species, right? So for him, he comes in and after doing some work, and even when we were doing some exposure therapy work, he could feel the flames hitting him in the face. And then we had to address the guilt. And what was his belief? It was my fault. I caused them to die. Right? So that was the belief system he was working with. It took us a while, but I think he came around. So what we're trying to do here with over time here with the triggers is we've got this fight or flight response. We've got this freeze response that can happen, but we want to learn how to flow. That's what we want these folks to get into, is use that power that's already inside of them to tap into that sympathetic, the parasympathetic system to help calm that system down. So I love psychology. I love human anatomy. I love the brain. I got to show you a slide about it. You might say, "Oh my God, here we go." But I want to show you that the thalamus, the amygdala, the hypothalamus, or the hippocampus, these have a relationship to how messages are encoded. Stress, if we got stress hormones that are flooding the system, adrenaline that's flooding the system, it's going to impact this area here. And if it's happening over time, there are other areas of the body, cingulate gyrus or cingulate cortex here, and the frontal cortex, that will impact too. We've got the locus ceruleus. I thought that would always be cool to call your dog locus ceruleus, right? It's 60,000 neurons, epinephrine neurons. It's like a switch. Boom. Turn on. Boom. Right? And so, anyway, and you got to keep in mind too that parts of the brain, every part of the brain has some function. And when we talk about TBI, that's going to come more into effect. Okay, so let's take a look here then at the experience of trauma and triggers. And this is where, you know, I've had a lot of vets come in and they're not even aware of what the triggers are. And that's what we got to get them aware of. Is what are those triggers, right? Even to talk about that could be, oh man, I'm not going. Right? So it takes some trust. It takes time. I like to think of trauma as equal to trust. Because somehow when the trauma happened, some trust in the world was broken. Some trust either inside or outside was broken. And that's what we got to start forging again, is trust. So, we got triggers. And the triggers, we got a powerful event, strong reactions, and then a deadly event. Bottom line is, so we got this powerful event, strong reactions, and what happens is, when I'm in a situation that's threatening, I want to overcome or avoid it. I'm going to duck and cover or whatever, right? You've heard that in some books. So, the pairing happens. This is classical conditioning almost. The pairing happens. So when we got like gunfire, fireworks, or a loud noise, there's a startle response or even a dissociative response. And so what we want to do is these conditioned pairings that have occurred over time or at one time, you know, it's automatic. And the executive functioning of the brain, it's slow. It's slow. But that fight or flight response is really fast. So what we got to do is we got to back it up. So think about this. I'm in a combat situation, in a car accident, and all of a sudden something happens. And particularly for those in combat, quick decision making, right? Quick decision making. I'm going to pull that trigger. Quick decision making, and it isn't until years later I have time to reflect. It's afterwards I start to process and take time, and that's when this stuff gets even juicier, right? So, okay. Take a look here, and what could be a threat in this picture? Whoops, what could be a threat in this picture?
Single male carrying a satchel.
I'm sorry?
Single male carrying a satchel.
Thank you. Single male carrying a satchel. What else? Yes, Mike.
I'm going to say pretty much everything.
Pretty much anything in that picture could be something that's threatening. Correct? Okay. So I've been in this area. I've been in this war zone. I've been there, and I've been conditioned now that everything in that picture is a threat. So, we got Westlake, for those of you that have been in Seattle, you know Seattle, for you Easterners, West of the Mountains, right? Bad joke, I'm sorry. This is Westlake Plaza, this is Pike Place Market. Are these two different? No. I mean, think about it. Yeah, you can say, yeah, things are different, but in general, we've got some similar stimulus. Similar threats in the mind of that person that has learned that this stuff is threatening. Does that make sense? Okay. I remember hearing a story of a guy who was actually in our Senate, and he was delayed coming to work, and said, "Yeah, I was stuck underneath an overpass." And they said, "Well, yeah, it happens. Traffic happens." And he says, "No, you don't understand. I was stuck. I couldn't go underneath because, you know, the experience I had when I was in the war zone was what happened with an overpass, and it took me a while to work myself through." Okay. So let's talk about PTSD. Are you with me? Okay. I feel so badly that you got to sit here and listen to me. We only have so much time, and I'd rather do group stuff, but it's hotter than games in here. So, but anyway, we got triggers, right? We understand what a trigger is now. And so, according to the DSM definition, a trigger will start to initiate either a cascade of experience. Intrusive recollections, re-experiencing. So, I get this trigger, the vet, Billy, that I talked about. What would happen when he would hear a helicopter rotor blade come overhead? he'd hit the deck. He'd go inside. That's when it happened. So he started to re-experience, and then he started to engage in survival behaviors that he was taught or that he learned. So we have this re-experience saying, well, if you're re-experiencing something uncomfortable, what is it that you want to normally do? This is making it, really uncomfortable. What do you want to do?
Get away.
You want to get away from it. Thank you. You want to get away from it. You want to avoid it. So you get these thoughts, feelings, this numbing withdrawal, and it's natural. This is a natural sort of progression, right? I want to avoid it, and I might even engage in alcohol and drugs to help numb that stuff out. Okay, so what happens next? Well, we've got this business upstairs. That's come into play now. We got these negative alterations in cognition and mood. What was Billy's belief? That caused him to die. What do you think that belief system caused him to feel? Guilt, shame, right? So you're going to have people that will have these beliefs like, and they may not even be aware of these beliefs. That's why we got to dissect this stuff out. The world is not a safe place. I'm no longer in control. There's no such thing as being morally right. Our cause is no longer honorable. People are no good. This is not a place I want to live. Are you, yes?
Dr. Smith, I want to respectfully disagree with you a little bit.
Okay.
Because you're tying in a subject that I've been studying for about 15 years.
Yeah.
Roy Harrington, DAV. I'm the DAV chapter, DAV state chaplain now.
Okay.
But I worked in the Pentagon, in the section of the Pentagon that tracked every single soldier's death and funeral for 3 years in the middle of the Iraq War. And you're tying in a lot of moral injury here.
A little bit.
Well, I think that's another subject matter for another day. But
Yes.
to me, moral injury and post-traumatic stress are two very different things.
Uh-huh.
And these thoughts about your moral unworthiness or survivor guilt, I think that's on the moral injury side of things.
Okay.
Post-traumatic stress is I think, another response. If you could speak to that just a little bit, I'd appreciate it.
Sure I can. Okay, I'm giving you some examples that, yes, let's just say, okay, so help me out here then. What might be another belief that someone might have that would impact their interpretation of a traumatic event? Well, I'm going to go with you, Roy. Let's see what
You
happens.
shouldn't kill.
Say it again.
You should not kill.
Thou shalt not kill. And then we get into the moral
That's
piece,
moral
like you
injury.
said, right? Okay, yes, ma'am.
Something's wrong.
Something's wrong with me. All right? Something's wrong with me. Okay. Give me another one.
The world is dangerous.
The world is dangerous.
That's post-traumatic stress.
Okay. Thank you. Okay? Yes.
Anxiety.
Anxiety. But what might be the belief that causes that anxiety? What might be?
That it might happen again,
It might happen again.
or it could happen to someone that you know,
Or
that
it
you
could
care
happen to
about.
somebody I know. Great. So I will say though, Roy, that I agree with you that you got moral injury and you got PTS, and the research is coming out more and more about moral injury. But there are different shades of blue. There's blue, and then we got different shades, and some blues overlap. And it's hard to dissect out with human beings. Oh, this is strictly moral, and this is strictly not, because that person might interpret it differently. And so, but thank you. I appreciate you bringing it up.
The problem is that the VA doesn't call moral injury any kind of diagnosis.
I got it.
That's
I got
the problem.
it. And I know that I've talked to clinicians that will strictly say, you could have gone through an experience and be talking moral injury, and they will say, no, it's not PTSD. Or they'll say, no, this is moral injury. You don't have PTSD yet. Anyway, it's complicated. But I appreciate you.
We'll talk after.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Something that I've learned is that when you look at
I'm sorry. When I said yes, ma'am, to her.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But that's okay. Can I come back with you? Yes.
I know there's more and more research coming out of PTSD coming in a spectrum. As a spectrum of, of not just moral injury, but also looking at relational trauma.
Right.
And like putting that in the same
Sure.
umbrella.
Sure. Yeah, relational, yeah, you got it. There is, thank you for that. Yes, ma'am?
Me?
Yes.
So I'm Shuri, and I've worked with trauma for over 20 years, and one thing that I've learned is that it's kind of like the chicken before the egg.
Yeah.
Things happen so quickly with the way we think, feel, and that physiological response. They're intertwined. Your cognition, your emotion, and your physiological response. And one can trigger the other into the other into the other. And I think that's where the gray comes from, because you have the cognition, you have the emotion, and you have the physiological response.
Right.
And so if you have that triad, you can be in the PTS or PTSD, but also have the emotion and the cognition.
Right.
And it all is interconnected. It happens so fast within you that
Yes.
it's what you attend to. That's kind of how I.
Thank you. Like I said, there's a lot of wisdom in the room here, and I'm sorry I'm rushing it. Go for it.
Just real quick on that, I don't know if it's the moral part or not, but the professionalism, sometimes we can make the wrong professional judgment and something terrible happens because, I don't know if it's the woulda, coulda realm, but
Professional judgment.
that affects me very deeply that, the pride that they take in the work that they do, especially some of the trauma medics and the surgeons, stuff like that, and in the moment they're working and it's like, oh, if I'd only done this, then they would have survived. And
Second guessing.
Right.
Yeah. And I'll offer again that all vets with PTSD are like some vets with PTSD are like no other vets with PTSD, and it's their story, and it's their story we got to work with. And the defining criteria, they're good for clinicians. For us here in our conversation is hopefully to give you some understanding.
Well, and veterans don't appreciate labels anyway.
They don't. Yeah.
So
people don't appreciate it. Thank you, Dwayne. So we go from here to the negative alterations in cognitions and mood, and then finally we get this startle response, right? We get this sleeping concentration difficulties, irritability, aggression, risky behavior. I was a number of Junes ago, probably a decade ago. I remember the Marine Corps, some of you can remember, they were experiencing a lot of motorcycle accidents and had to implement a motorcycle safety program, right? I'll give you an example of what's going on there. But the bottom line is we got some people that will express this irritability, this startle response business in other ways that are not quite as healthy. But bottom line too, you've heard about the spouse that in the middle of the night, in the nightmare, might reach over and start choking, or choking someone, or something of that nature. Is that yeah, okay. So I just wanted to then share. Okay, just as another example, we've got Jane, who was in a car accident, and she experienced an accident. She re-experiences the freeway, the pavement, the wreckage, all of that. She then wants to not get on the road, wants to avoid the road, and her belief might be, I could have swerved quicker, I caused it to happen, I experienced depression, and I feel irritable, agitated, I can't sleep now as a result. So I'm putting this simplistically, this is pretty complex, and bottom line is that these all go together, right? We've got different experiences happening here at the same time, and we could intervene at any one of these. The curious thing here with PTSD is there's a paradox. And the first paradox is that in combat, PTSD reactions will save your life. Fight or flight, right? Fight or flight. And so aggression, overcoming danger, emotional numbing, guided anger, denial of needs and pain, they're essential in a combat unit. They're essential, right? And so they need survival. Does that fit? Does that make sense? Okay. They're not functional in civilian life, though. It doesn't work when you come home. So years after coming home, veterans are still troubled by the triggers and the reactions. And much of the treatment we know, as we've discussed now, is about identifying the triggers and deconditioning. And once home, the vet needs to learn to turn off that war-related pair bond. It takes some time, it takes a while, and it's not easy as I'm describing it up here. So, but PTSD reactions will save one's life. It's like the battle of the whole mind's business. The second paradox of PTSD, yes ma'am?
I didn't like the word turn off.
Turn off, okay.
Can we say like
readjust? Yeah,
like,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. I'm glad.
New neural pathways.
Rebuild neural pathways, learn new stress techniques. Yeah. So I appreciate you guys offering and giving me some soft challenges here and direct challenges about, hey, could we do this differently? As a result, you guys are helping to educate the audience better than I am. I appreciate that. Some vets get good at avoidance of feelings and painful memories. True?
Numbing.
Numbing, right? Yeah, numbing. So, no emotions, what happens? No emotions means that if I numb, life gets a little bored, gets joyless, I get depressed, and I'm living without pleasure, right? So what's the result? It's trying to find that adrenaline rush again, or that sensation-seeking behavior. I get on that crotch rocket, I go to 90, 100 miles an hour, I feel the adrenaline, I feel alive again, right? Or I put myself in a situation where I feel like I'm in harm's way or whatever's going on, and we're reenacting a moment that had occurred before. Does that fit? I don't think we talk about this too much, and we don't educate our folks about this. So that adrenaline-oriented activity can be extreme sports, spelunking, I don't know, that was a bad attempt at humor at this point. But risk-taking behavior, firearms, motorcycles are typically, right? What was how did Lawrence Arabia die?
Motorcycle accident.
Motorcycle accident, right? And transitional objects, the thrill and illusion of safety. The gun, I come home, particularly the Marines. What did the Marines learn about your weapon? It's my friend, right? It's what I've grown to live with. It's the object that helps one survive. And so when I get home, I need that transitional object to help me keep safe. I got to have that with me because that's become, I hate to use this example. No, I won't use it. But the bottom line is for some people, these objects or whatever's going on help people to feel safe. Okay, I'm going to go down a path that I think that we need to talk about, and I know I'm short on time, but I'm going to do this with you. You know the song by The Who? No one, I don't proclaim to be a singer. No one knows what it's like to be the sad man, or bad man, to be the sad man. Behind the blue eyes, well, that's how the article begins, right? The guard opened the gate. I gave the Humvee a little gas, and she fell into step behind the truck in front of her. My heart lightened in my chest as we again ventured from the relative safety of the base out into the open farmland of central Iraq. Our team stopped shy of the mission's focus, an improvised explosive device on the side of the road waiting for an unwary American convoy to stumble into the wrong place at the wrong time. As we secured the area, a burst of gunfire rang out from my left. My squad was shouting to each other, sharing what little information we had. Iraqi farmers were scattering, trying to evade the crossfire. Another shot, I saw the flash. I turned my weapon toward the second shooter, called out his position to my team. I closed my left eye as I peered at him through the sights of my rifle. I flipped the selector switch on my weapon from safe to semi. We engaged the target. That was the instant I dived. So I'm gonna cross into, I realize for some, this might not be PTSD, but I do think we need to, I feel like I gotta do this with you. And that is about the burden of killing, death, and destruction. I'm gonna cross into that moral injury. But I think this is worth noting, because when we talk about PTSD, I really do believe it is post-traumatic spiritual disorder. It's post-traumatic soul disorder. It's deeper. You can just say it's all up here, but I think it's the entire fabric of the human spirit that's impacted. So I'm sorry I forgot to have the symbol up there. But you know, we've had veterans that have killed with hate, rage, and elation. You go to Hope 2004. You did research on this. And these guys, that's what they're experiencing. Killing someone up close, seeing gruesome scenes, handling dead body parts. I don't care what war, these folks are going through this, right? So when we talk about wounding the soul, and this is Tick, War and Redemption, let me just highlight a couple things here, and you're going to see this on your PowerPoint. The deep pain and regret for killing other human beings. This gets into the moral injury, the survival guilt, purpose and meaning of life are changed. The soul's wounds represent loss of connection. Mention of soul spirit disorder and the loss of empathy and emotions. I believe in myself, if we're talking about PTSD and we're talking about folks that have killed, we need to also talk about the moral injury component of what they've been through. I think they go hand in hand. So that's me personally. And you're going to get clinicians that don't disagree. But I think it's important for us to bring it up. Okay, so I don't have time to show this. How many of you seen the Kyle Hausman Stokes Now After video? If you look up Kyle Hausman Stokes Now After, it's a 15-minute video of his experience of coming back to a college campus and his experience of it could have been battle mind to home mind, but it could have been PTSD. If we had time, I'd show it to you. It's a very powerful film. If you're going to watch it, have tissue ready. Anyway, Now After by Kyle Hausman Stokes. We don't have time today. I would encourage you to look it up. The Vimeo version rather than YouTube, I think, is better. Vimeo is just about a minute longer. The YouTube, he takes a couple things out, I think, removes the new ones. But in the end of the story, is very powerful, and I'm not going to give it away. So, okay. Any questions? I realize I've been going. Any questions so far? Treatment resources. What would you recommend? Say it again. Internal family systems. Hopefully they're supportive, right? What else? What other treatment resources are there? Yes.
Service dog.
Service animals. For some, that is huge. What else?
Peer support.
Say it again?
Peer support.
Peer support? You bet.
Counseling.
Say it again?
Counseling.
Counseling.
Mindfulness.
Mindfulness. So now we're talking specific therapies. Yeah.
I've got a specific resource called Reboot Combat Recovery.
Reboot Combat
Recovery. It's a 12-week course, came out of Fort Campbell, Kentucky about 15 years ago.
Okay.
And it's a 12-week spiritual journey to heal from post-traumatic stress, moral injury, and military sexual trauma.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
Reboot
Combat Recovery.
Yeah, go to rebootrecovery.com.
Rebootrecovery.com. Yes, sir.
Wherever saying that the GI needs to be equal. You know, they spend migrating with 8 weeks teaching people.
Yeah.
So they need 8 weeks to teach you to do that.
Right. So the deprogramming part of coming back and reading and learning how to, I guess, become a civilian again, but also
That's
working.
where they kick you out the door.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I was going to say
MDMA and ketamine treatment. I just saw an article in 2021 that there's like a triple blind study, and they were getting some really successful outcomes of that. Yes, ma'am.
Build positive relationships with community leaders and chaplains.
Yes.
Our our military servicemen and women are used to having chaplains when they're active duty. And that's something that I feel we could bring some attention to.
Yes.
In the private sector as
Yes.
well.
Yeah. God, I wish we could just spend like a half an hour just on this piece alone, because you've got the wisdom here. So treatment resources. You're gonna see this. Sorry, you're gonna see this in the handout. But you know, EMDR, prolonged exposure therapy, cognitive processing therapy. These are all ways the VA that they're called Gold Star evidence-based practices. I'd say that if you take a look at the resources, ptsd.gov, appabus.com, AskGen, that's going to be in your handout. There are many, many more. You've got access to this. They're going to pass that on to you. I'm sorry to rush. The strategies, I heard, who said that at the beginning? Monty, what was your strategy your wife uses? Can I put you on the spot?
Yeah,
I already did.
When I dream, I have bad dreams and I have nightmares, and they're not chronic, they're acute. So I say that for a reason, because I don't live in a chronic place of shit, for lack of a better word. But when I do have them, I wake up and she just rubs my back real quietly, real gently. She says, I'm a little emotional. She says, you're not there wherever that dream was.
Ain't that powerful? Ain't that
And I
powerful?
realize it's
Right.
acute, not chronic. I'm okay.
Right. So the idea here would be relationship first. And you just heard that. And being in the here and now. Right? What strategies work for that individual? I want to get to know what helps them to calm down, and to help explain that this is normal stuff for what you've been through. So let's figure a way through this, right? And to try to initiate what's going on inside the body, the deep breathing, progressive muscle relaxation. I'm just offering us some strategies. Grounding strategies, staying in the here and now. So I've had some folks rattled in my office when we've done events, and I might say, I want you to read every title on the bookshelf and tell me that what do you see? Or describe to me every aspect of the boot that you're wearing on the floor. I'm trying, basically it would be this. I'm trying to lose your mind and come to your senses. That's what I'm trying to do. Bring it back into the present and the here and now. And in doing that, that would be some grounding strategy. Listening to the running water. Do you hear the fan going on in the room? No, I can't. I want you to listen closely to that. Try. Yes, ma'am.
I had a really quick question. When folks are coming in for services as the veteran PTSD, are the spouses referred for services too, so they know what to do and how to support them?
I'm gonna let yes. Go ahead. Answer
I'm
that.
going to say yes because I go in for counseling just like my husband.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. So yes, would be the answer. Thank you. Okay. What's that? We hope. Yeah, and then man, it's all about relationship. It's all you can't do it alone. We need relationship in our lives, right? Anyway, that's what it's about. Okay, I realize you've been sitting there for almost an hour hearing Schmidt rattle off. I'm going to change things up a little bit, and let's talk about traumatic brain injury. You okay with that? Yes. All right. I realize it was a fast track, and God, I'm just jazzed by you being here. Okay, let's talk about TBI. You got 100 billion cells inside your head. You got a 3-pound mass of gelatinous tissue. And with TBI, it affects about 2% of the population. We have a TBI in this country that happens 1 every 16 seconds. 1 in every 60 people, that's 5.3 million people, have lived with a TBI. and in a year, and the lifetime economic cost for someone that has a moderate to a severe TBI, it's a $76.5 billion. Now that was a stat from back in 2010. Guess what it might be now, right? So it's expensive. The healthcare utilization report that I mentioned earlier about PTSD and those deployed, they talk about it as diseases of the nervous system, like 625,000 of our OEF, OND, OIF folks that have reported to the VA and have been diagnosed with that. Are there others out there that haven't come forward? Okay, so if we take a look at TBIs, 30% of all injury deaths, that's what happens with the TBIs, 30% of all injury deaths. And there's about 50,000 deaths a year as a result of TBI. So, what would you think? It's common. It's a common or an understandable definition. TBI is a form of acquired brain injury when it occurs when a sudden traumatic trauma causes impact to the brain. Right? Car accident. One big one is attempted suicide, and which causes brain damage for some for their lives. And if we take a look at the types of injury, I want to talk about it from a military perspective. We have, and I'm going to make this easy for you because we're going to do a case study in a minute. We have what's called a primary injury. You remember seeing the video from the 50s of the nuclear tests that happened, and you saw that blast wave that went out, and it destroyed that building, and what happened then? The blast wave came back, right? And so when we got these guys that have experienced IEDs or explosives or whatever, or even ordnance that's shot off a Navy ship, you can see the blast wave go out, and you can see it retract. Well, the body gets impacted by that. So it's an injury from overpressurization, the blast wave impacting the body surface. So we could have a transmeningeal rupture, a pulmonary damage, or an air embolism as a result of, and that would be primary. Okay? You got me? All right. I believe in you. I know I'm going to go through this stuff, and you're going to get. It's going to come for you, come natural for you. Secondary, injury from projectiles. You can watch some of these videos out there on YouTube of these guys disarming or actually going into these zones where an IED goes off, and you still got fragments flying, and they're coming at you, right? And so we've got these bomb fragments flying debris. That would be a secondary injury from a projectile. So primary is the way. Secondary is the projectile. Third, tertiary, is being thrown into a fixed object. So you hear about these guys that are in these Humvees or these other vehicles, and they're tossed around because of that blast. Well, that's what's going on. So crash injuries, blunt penetrating trauma. Quaternary would be the inhalation of toxic gases or significant blood loss. Right? So stuck inside the Humvee or losing a limb as a result of the blast. Or breathing the toxins as a result. And then finally, we've got quintary injuries from additive. Bacteria, we've got bombs that are loaded with bacteria, or radiation, or gas. So 5, right? Primary, secondary, tertiary. You got that? And I'm going to give you a handout, and you got it in a second. So, I got to go through biology again. Here we have an axon and a dendrite. We've got 100 billion of those in your brain. What happens when we've got a blast or something that hits the brain? It can cause the brain to twist. When we have that twist, we have what's called diffuse axonal injury. It could mean that these have sheared in half, right? You may not even know it, but it can occur. So when we have closed head injury, what happens with the blast, and you can see this in car accidents with that airbag going off, the brain comes forward, the And you got the brain that can hit this bony protrusion up in front here. And then the brain rocks back, and boom, hits the back of the brain. And so, and if we had a twisting of the skull at a high impact, it could also do the shearing. We have what's called then a Contra Coup effect. Is that, yeah, Contra Coup effect. So, it's important then, you know, if we're talking to somebody, if they can recall what happened, we can, you know, not that you're going to diagnose, but I think just to gain some understanding of what's happening there. Okay, so very, very briefly then, let's talk about TBI classifications. In order to be diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury, one has had to have lost consciousness. LOC, loss of consciousness, so presence and duration of the time the individual is unconscious. And then we're going to quantify this a little bit more. Post-traumatic amnesia, was there a state of confusion or disorientation? Was there inability to learn, to recall, to decode, or encode? And so we got PTA, post-traumatic amnesia. We also have what's called the Glasgow Coma Scale. Glasgow Coma Scale is all about determining how much it talks about I gotta get rid of this thing. It talks about, you know, like eyes. They're going to measure what's going on with the eyes. They're going to measure motor function, pushing like down onto the fingernails or something of that nature. They're going to measure verbal response if they can. So these three together will determine what type of brain injury. Let's show you. So if I was loss of consciousness for less than 30 minutes, post-traumatic amnesia for less than 24 hours, and a Glasgow Coma scale of 13 to 15, which 60 to 85% of folks have, then we are calling that a mild traumatic brain concussion. Moderate would be more than 30 minutes, but less than 24. Post-traumatic amnesia, 24 to 7 days, and a Glasgow Coma scale of 9 to 12. And then severe would be 24 hours or more, 7 days or more, and 3 to 8 Glasgow Coma scale. So let's make this real for you. Can we hand those out, please? I think we can do this. I believe in you. I'm going to ask you to read the case study that you have before you. You're welcome to work in groups. And what I'm wanting you to do is, once you read through the case study, I'd like you to identify, would you rate Sergeant Reynolds' TBI as mild, moderate, or severe? Describe the type of concussion, and list the physical, cognitive, behavioral symptoms. I know you can do this. So, once you get this packet, take a look at the case study. We've got about less than 15 minutes left, and I know you can do this. So. Are my directions clear?
Yes.
Any others?
On page 3, you have a TBI symptom sheet. On page 4, you have other symptoms, but page 3 can be of assistance to you. And while we didn't talk about symptoms, I think you're going to pick up on it. much, Tim. Thanks, Gary.
Yes, sir.
Everybody get a hand? Everybody get a hand? You would like one? What is that? Wait, thank you, sir.
Let's go. I'm supposed to be in here shortly. It's awesome. There's so much. It's like the best person. Do you have a case study?
It's okay if you work with each other, it's fine. How are we doing? You need more time? I think you're all A students out there. let's come back together and let's figure out what we can do here with the time that we have. And then there's definitely, okay, so let's do this first, and then we'll close it out. What did you pick up on, for those of you that got through the story? Would you rate his TBI as mild, moderate, or severe? What you got for extreme, right?
Based on the definitions, the strict definition of it, it was mild.
Mild, right? We got less than 10 minutes, right? Post-traumatic amnesia, and continues to have vague recollections on what transpired that day. Yes, I would agree with you. And if you have anything else, that's okay. We can talk about it otherwise. But for right now, that would be that's going on there. What's the type of concussion? Primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary, quaternary. What did you pick up?
Multiple?
We got a secondary, a shrapnel to the cheek, right? For sure we got that. The quaternary, did he smell acrid black smoke? Yeah, so we got that as evidence for the two there. And then finally, what were some of the symptoms? And if you want to take a look at that sheet, I purposely left the titles off it, but if you want to look at up the top, headaches, right? Did you pick up on headaches? Insomnia, garbled speaking. We're talking about their physical symptoms. So on page 3, when you talk about headache down to changes in sexual interest, that's all physical, right? And then we've got cognitive. What do you pick up there? Couldn't recall. We got memory. We got concentration difficulties, and then that bottom cluster of symptoms on the bottom of that sheet would be labeled cognitive. What did you get for emotional? Irritability. Yeah, irritability. We got impulsiveness, guilt, agitation. So we've got those 3. So bottom line, why I wanted to do this is, and to give you the sheet, is that I was a dean, director of counseling at one point in time. I had a veteran in the second quarter come to me in the 7th week of the second quarter on financial aid. He's in my office, we're talking, he's upset and stressed, and by our conversation and what the experience I had learned from him, I said, and I gave him a sheet similar to this. I said, would you please read this through for me? And I said, just check mark anything that you feel applies to you. The whole sheet was almost full. And he said, God damn it, why didn't anybody tell me this before? He was stressed, he was going to lose his financial aid, he was married, had kids, and everything was taken because he did not know or understand these symptoms were going on inside of him. Does that make sense? We can be vehicles and liaisons to helping folks find the way. And so I'm not asking you to diagnose, and I didn't. I just said my suggestion would be to go to the VA and make an appointment. Or go see a clinician and let them see the sheet and talk about it. Is that fit? Okay, so what are you going to do with all this information? What if you have somebody that has a TBI in front of you? Robots. Can I cover this and then we're going to close? Let's talk about robots. When you're working with somebody with a TBI, you want to reduce the amount of information you are presenting. That's the R. Do you want me to write this down? Or you just like going, get this done. 90 minutes of sitting there, I'd be feeling the same way you are. Write it down? Okay. So, reduce the amount of info or keep it simple. Let's say, reduce the amount. Keep it simple. Right? 2 minutes, we'll do it. O stands for one instruction at a time. So make sure they understand before you move on. The third would be written and verbal whenever possible because it helps with memory. The more you can get the encoding into the brain, a lot of different pathways, the better. So written and verbal. Breaks are helpful. B, breaks are helpful. Don't just sit there for 90 minutes like you are and take some breaks. I realize it's contradictory to what I'm saying to you. Thanks for your humor. Often is better. Often is better. That means repetition. What we want there is we want repetition, reminding, routine. I could add 3 R's, right? Repetition, reminding, routine. Ask them what they heard. Ask what they heard. Take time. Unlike this presentation, take time and go slow. Right? So take time. And go slow. And finally, simple and organized is best. You know, when you build a house, you build it from the ground up. Give them the information that stacks on top of each other. Don't offer it like globally or from the top down. So basically, simple and organized information is the best. Does that make sense? If you use this with the folks in front of you, it's going to help build a relationship, trust, and connection. And I realize that was quick for you. But when you're with these folks, I got another slide in there on what to do with symptom management. But the bottom line is this approach with that individual in front of you will be helpful further. I want to say thank you very much for your time. I realize this is quick. It was less time than I'd like to have to operate with you. And it's been an honor. I thank you for everyone's comments in here today. I really appreciate them. For those of you who chose to keep quiet, I appreciate your active participation as well. And may the force be with you. Have a great rest of the conference. Okay?